I first discovered Barony end of 2016. It was during the Steam winter sale, and I searched the thing that you search for at the time, which was co-op games on Steam. I came across Barony. It sort of ticked all the boxes I was looking for, which was online multiplayer. It wasn't strictly a party game, it was a full-on dungeon crawler, and it had a fantasy aesthetic that really clicked with me. It took me about 2 days from when I first played Barony to becoming absolutely enamored with the project.
Josiah and I met Ben through Steam discussion forums. Barony had at that point fostered a very small community of followers.
I had read the Barony Steam forums back to back. Back in the day, there were only about 100 or so threads total, and in one of them I discovered the source code for the game was publicly available. After a few days, I had finally managed to actually compile the game, which was easier said than done as I had never used Visual Studio to build a project before. Barony at the time had around 20 levels in a full playthrough, and so I had an idea to mod the game by lengthening each biome from 4 to 7 levels and adding more monster variants and items. A lot of the UI at the time was simple rectangles which I could easily edit, and the software for the 3D voxels was easy enough to play with.
He was already kind of modding the game and posting images to Steam of some of the additions he was making. He was adding new items and things like that.
So a couple months later, I shared the first screenshots of my ideas in a mod, featuring some recolored skeletons, recolored leather armor, some tooltips for some stats, and I also showed off pictures of player stats that change with your character class, since at the time every class leveled their stats equally randomly, and I thought it'd be cool if every class had a unique stat distribution, so a warrior could level up their strength more often, or a wizard could level up intelligence more.
At this point, with Josiah, I had paused working on Barony myself to begin working on a new project, but Barony was still out there, and Josiah and Cyprian, who was at the time a fellow programmer of ours, were beginning to design an addition to the game, but they really didn't have the means to make it because I had stopped programming Barony. Cyprian ostensibly was there to help him program it, but he really didn't have the time, so Josiah was without a programmer on Barony. So I noticed that Ben was modifying the game and adding new things, and I thought, this guy seems pretty competent.
It was a couple weeks after first sharing my stuff, the creator of the game, Sheridan, reached out to me on Steam and connected with a chat request. Basically, we had a quick chat and he thought my idea looked promising, and it turns out his team was starting work on a tentative expansion to Barony, and I was beginning work on an expansion to Barony, so it was a great match from the start.
My introduction with him was actually very, very brief and informal. Frankly, I don't even remember how I messaged him or reached out to him, but I did. I sent him a message. I asked him if he was, interested in collaborating on the game, and he was like, yeah, sure. So I just invited him to our Slack group and began working with Josiah, and they made rapid progress over the following year on the expansion that they were working on, which would become Blessed Edition.
My first contribution to the project was something I had already been working on, and that was adding properties to objects in the map editor. Originally in the editor, you just place sprites down and they'd have fixed behavior in-game, like a chest would always be random or monsters had predefined stats and equipment. When I started modding, that was the first feature I worked on so that I could quickly prototype monsters with stats and equipment that I wanted without hard coding in the code. And it turns out that other feature is something that we use heavily to this day. Hundreds of maps wouldn't be possible without a basic system like that. As a side note, objectively the code I wrote for it at the time is crap and is still crap, but it was part of my design contribution ethos towards the project, which was to build around the museum of the game rather than tear down and change fundamentally how the code worked.